listening. And I want to tell you, I was denied tenure the first time around in the management department because they told me that listening was not a reasonable academic discipline for a management scholar to pursue. Go figure. It did come around, it is fine, but what we know, one of the most important things here, in 1952, Rogers and Roethlisberger wrote an article for the Harvard Business Review called Barriers and Gateways to Communication, where they talked about communication as a management skill and listening as a big piece of that. It is the most requested reprint that people pay for in the history of the Harvard Business Review magazine, journal. So what we know is that if you go to the lay press, the Wall Street Journal, if you go to Business Week or Fortune or any management recruiters, what they will tell you is what they want are people who can communicate, people who can listen, people who can problem solve. But yet, as we look at this, there's just nothing out there that empirically says any of this is important to business. One of the places we started, there is something called Cabell's in the United States. It's a directory of every journal that publishes anything in management. We threw the management Cabell's. We looked at 179 of the 300 journals were found, 579 hits in 22 journals, no empirically based evidence that says communication has anything to do with business success. There's just not there. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting for us as communication scholars and as business scholars, it's an area of research that's just huge right now. There's just nothing out there. Like we know it intuitively, the articles that are written are either descriptive, you do this, 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 or they're anecdotal, oh by the way. But the empirical piece is just not there. So this is kind of where we started, is if this is so important, and we've said this since 1952, how do we prove it? What we looked at is we went back to some of the supervisor subordinate data that says, okay, what about relationships between managers and their subordinates? There is some evidence out there that says communication lies at the heart of it. And there's some other evidence out there that's kind of interesting, which talks about the concept of perceptual congruence. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you see it and I see it the same way. So if I think I'm a dictatorial manager and you think I'm a dictatorial manager, we're going to have a lot of success. But if I think I'm really inclusive and you think I'm dictatorial, whoa, wait a minute here. So this notion of congruence in perception is an important part that we have looked at to some respects. The purpose of this study then, we wanted to look at the congruence in perceptions of listening style and skill between supervisors and subordinates. So, if I think I'm a good listener as your supervisor, and you think I'm a good listener, does it make a difference? If I think I'm a good listener, and you don't, does it make a difference? We also wanted to look at styles because there is some research out there that says we listen in different ways. So this is sort of where it starts, and what we really wanted to do is to begin to bridge this gap between the scholarly management literature and the scholarly communication literature, because we just do not see that in the literature. Again, importance. 50 to 90% of a manager's time is spent listening in communication activities. We know we listen more than we speak. No studies have looked at it. And the interesting thing is the studies out there that have looked at communication and its impact on management success have not included listening as a communication variable. So that's kind of where we started. So here's the question: do perceptions of congruence in listening and listening styles really have an impact on organizational outcomes? Does it matter? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Juan Ling, and let her talk about what we found. Thank you again.
Good morning, everyone. I will introduce the methods and the results of our study. Our data of this study were collected from a university in the southern United States, involving supervisor-subordinate diads among non-academic employees. 36 supervisors and 135 employees completed our survey. The response rates were above 70%, which is very good. Supervisors were asked to provide their own names, and subordinates were asked to provide their supervisors' names, so we can match each supervisor-subordinate tag. The 16-item listening styles profile was used to measure listening styles. There are 4 listening styles: people, action, content, and time-oriented. The last presentation is related to the time-oriented style. We averaged every 4 items for each style. Most of the supervisors have 1 or 2 main styles. Here, perceptual congruence in a supervisor's listening style occurs when there's a match between how a supervisor sees him or herself and how a subordinate sees the supervisor in terms of listening styles. When supervisors and the subordinates reported 2 or more listening styles, congruence occurs when there is at least 1 style that can match. Congruence was coded as 1, while incongruence was coded as 0. This is our main independent variable. Here are our dependent variables, including good listener, interpersonal conflict, trust in leadership, leader-member exchange, interpersonal justice, and informational justice. Good listener was measured by a single item. I think my supervisor is a good listener. For all the other dependent variables, as you see here, we use well-established measures. Our control variables include gender, age, race, these demographic characteristics, and how long participants have worked for the current position, and how long participants have worked for this university. This is our correlation table, including all the control variables, independent variable, and dependent variables. Our last presentation is interested in gender, the first variable here. From the first column, we can see gender is not related to most of our variables. It's only related to interpersonal conflict. This is our regression table. The regression results indicate that our focal variable, perceptual congruence in the listening style, positively and significantly affected good listener, trust in leadership, leader-member exchange, interpersonal justice, and informational justice, while it negatively and significantly affected interpersonal conflict. Our study contributes to the literature on communication and management by exploring listening as an important management skill. We found that perceptual congruence in listening styles between supervisors and subordinates does matter. It significantly affects important job outcomes. So we hope that future research will continue to investigate these key management skill to bring greater clarity to this common and understudied organizational phenomenon. Thank you so much.